Hello, welcome to Racecraft again. This is the next part in how to put a V8 into your Sigma, a Windsor specifically. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you don't use is one of these big old clapper style starter motors. You're tight for clearance where the extractors fit, so you don't want to take up any more room with a bulky starter motor like that. So what you need, it's already bolted onto the side of the engine here, what you want is one of these little gear reduction style starters. And that'll give you the most clearance that you can get. It's unfortunate that the starter's on the right hand side, so is the steering box, but that's what we've got to live with. So over here I've got a selection of different types of extractors. Most of them are just ones that I've bought off eBay. So this style here is your Mustang Shorty headers, and in my previous video I've actually shown you where I've cut the flange off and shortened it up a little bit so it clears the steering box, clears the starter motor and everything else. So I've cut the flange off there, added this pipe to it, and that tucks in there really nicely. So they're Mustang Shorty headers, and they fit okay. These are quite nicely made, stainless steel, tri-wise style, and they come surprisingly close to fitting just as they are. The problem with them is, I'll bolt them up a little later and I'll show you where the problem lies, but it's basically in this pipe here coming over and wanting to hit the gearbox. Not so much of a problem if you're using a C4, but definitely if you're using an AOD. The biggest problem that you're going to run into is the difference in the cylinder heads on these Windsors. You've basically got two types of cylinder heads, GT40 heads and not GT40 heads. The big difference is Ford moved the spark plug angle, and most of these extractors, they've all been made for early Windsors like 289s and 302s, and even your early 5 litres, your EA, EB, ED motors. Once you got to AU, that's where you got your GT40 heads. So I'll grab a pair of these and I'll show you how they fit. So I've got the left-hand extractor here. This is the early motor. This is the not GT40 heads, what they call E7 heads. I've got a couple of studs in there just to locate, and they go on there quite nicely. You can put your spark plug leads on, really not a problem. Where the problem arises is when we try it onto a late model motor, like an AU motor with the GT40 heads. You can see the spark plug angle is actually quite different. Now I've put a 90-degree boot on there just to illustrate a point here. So when we try these onto the GT40 heads, you can see this is starting to get really close in here, where it doesn't on the E7 heads. So you would have to run a 90-degree boot. But apart from that, that left-hand side fits not too badly. I'll turn these motors around and we'll see how we go with the right-hand side. So this is the right-hand extractor. This is the one that I've cut. So this misses the steering box. We'll try that onto our E7 heads, on our early heads, and spark plug's clear. Not an issue at all. Now we'll try it on the GT40 heads, and as you can see, we've got a few problems there. That one's okay. These three are all really close. So not really very good for GT40 heads. And this is a trend that you're going to see as we try the other sets of extractors as well. So we're going to try the tri-wise now and try those on the E7 heads. Not much of a little bit tight there, but once again, we'd get away with a 90-degree boot on there. I don't think that'd be a problem. We'll try those onto the GT heads. And that one there's a problem. These ones, good. But this one here, ooh, that's really, really deadly close. I guess you could go crude and put a dent in the pipe there and get a 90-degree boot on it. In an ideal world, you'd cut the pipe off and just bring it out a little bit of a nicer angle, which is probably what I'll end up doing on this one. So that's the right-hand side. Not too bad, but yes, you'd want to modify that front pipe. I'll turn these motors around. We'll see how the left-hand side fits. Okay, so left-hand side, early heads, on there, no problem at all, clears everything by a mile. So that's quite a nice fit. Go to our GT heads. And I think you'd almost live with that one. It's very close, but this front one, this is a major problem. That's right on the spark plug there. So that's another one that would need to be cut off and brought out to a nicer angle. Wouldn't be a real difficult job to do. So if I end up using these, I'll have to modify this front pipe. So you can see that the GT40 heads with this revised spark plug angle and extractors that are made basically for early heads, not a real good fit. Right, one more set to try. All right, so we're going to try the block huggers now. I have used these block huggers before, and I know you've got to cut the flange off and get a 90-degree pipe here to miss the cross member. But on the heads, beautiful. Misses all the spark plugs, really not an issue there at all. So try that on our GT heads. And that's not a bad fit, a little bit close here. Once again, I think we'd probably get away with a 90-degree boot on there. Yep, actually that does clear. So, not too bad. We'll see what the other side's like. So I'll turn those motors around again and then we'll try the right-hand side. Okay, so right-hand side with our block huggers. Again, no problem at all as far as clearing the spark plugs. I know that this pipe gets awfully tight in around the steering box, so that might be another cut the flange off job to be able to get that in tight enough. But anyway, that fits there. How are we on our GT heads? Actually, that's quite a good fit on the GT heads as well. We've got plenty of clearance around all of the spark plugs. So if we can make them fit the chassis, these look like quite a good set. I'm going to bolt these tri-wires into the chassis here. These are the ones that possibly need the least modifying. I know they'll have to be cut down here to bring this away, but I'll bolt them on, we'll raise up the car and I'll show you how they fit around the gearbox. I've got the extractors bolted on, well almost bolted on. The right hand side I can't pull up against the cylinder head. If you look down here, you can see there's a space there on the cylinder head, and that's because the pipe down there is actually hitting the gearbox. But I'm not concerned about this yet because we'll modify the pipe down the bottom, then we'll be able to pull the extractors right up. So I'll get the car up, we'll have a look underneath. So this is the left-hand extractor. I've got it bolted on. It misses the gearbox bell housing here, but it comes dangerously close to the pan. Now remember, this is an AOD gearbox, so it's a big box. This may actually fit in with a C4, but it's not going to be a real big job to change this. I'll just cut it through here, angle this pipe around so it goes through this little bit of room that we've got here. So left-hand side looks pretty good. It's bolted up tight against the head, but yeah, so just a little bit of modification here. Right-hand side now. So we're on the right-hand side now, and this pipe really dives across. You can see the big angle here with the chassis rail. So that will be another cut through here where this collector joins onto the two secondary pipes, angle it around, and I think it'll probably be fairly good. There's a little bit close here on the near the starter motor, But I think if I just grind a little bit off the ear of the bell housing there, that might just go on. Otherwise, it comes through there not too bad at all. So if you were using the early heads or even aluminium heads tend to have the spark plug in the original position, unlike the GT40 heads. These are probably about your best choice. So I'll cut these, angle them around and see if we can get them to fit better. I've got the Mustang Shorty headers bolted on there now. These are the ones that I cut the flange off, welded the flange back in again. If you have a look down here, you'll be able to see that it clears the steering box there quite nicely, clears the starter motor and everything else. I'll take it up in a minute and I'll show you where the pipe comes out underneath. And the opposite side, well, they're more or less unmodified. They actually fit quite well, apart from the down pipe where I've cut the flange off. All right, you can see the modified extractor here. It misses the starter motor, misses the side of the block, the cross member, the steering box. So fits fairly well. This is the left-hand side. This is the least modified extractor. I've had to make these extra pipes here, but they clear everything and not a bad fit. Well, I hope that's been informative. You've seen a few different types of extractors. You've seen the difference in the early heads and the late model heads. So I guess it's just a matter of deciding which pipes you'd like to use. So hope that's been helpful. Thanks for tuning in.